Moment of silence before we say the pledge, and dedicate this to the victims of the shooting in Las Vegas.
Thank you. If everyone will join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. We will go ahead and get underway here, and we'll start with roll call.
Member Keeney. Member Wolf.
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Zaragoza.
Here.
Member Friend.
Here.
It's noted that member list is absent tonight.
Thank you. So we have established quorum, and we'll go ahead and move to the consent calendar. We'll go ahead and do these actually by item because there were some not here for item 1.2. So item 1.1, the agenda for today.
Move the item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And item 1.2.
Move the item.
Second.
I have a minor change to the minutes, and rather than pull it from the consent calendar, I think we can just make a quick change. On section 5, or page 2, 5.2, the zoning ordinance, we postponed that, and the vote shows that it was approved 3-0. I actually opposed postponing it, so I would like to have the minutes revised to show that I actually voted no on that.
Okay.
Totally cool.
I have to withdraw my motion. I wasn't here for this.
Oh.
I read them and said, those look correct to me, but obviously I wasn't.
I move adoption
I must
of
have
the
watched
minutes.
them. I wouldn't watch the video.
Second.
Technically, that's the minutes as amended.
Correct.
As amended. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 So that's,
That's adopted. And then now item 1.2.
oh.
I'm sorry, that's what we just.
Sorry,
that's
that
what we
was
just did.
1.2.
That
Mr.
was
Chairman.
from the
That's what we
meeting on
just
September 19th.
No, but that change was from,
For the September 19th meeting?
oh, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I thought we delayed the other.
We did.
So are we missing a set of minutes then?
I am a little bit confused on this too, because I thought we agreed with regards to the zoning ordinance yards, chapter 4, that because we knew some members were going to be absent on the 19th, myself included, that we were not going to have that item. I wasn't here for the meeting, so maybe it was on the agenda nonetheless. I
until
do
we
not
had a
recall.
Yeah,
It was on the agenda.
it was for continuance.
Yeah, that was the motion. It was approved 3-0 to continue the item to October 17th. That's reflective in the minutes on page 2.
All right, okay.
And my
So now
reason-
I'm confused.
Okay.
You opposed continuing it? Just to
I
be
did,
clear.
because it was on our agenda, and I feel if staff put something, before the planning commission, we should address it rather than keep postponing that.
Oh, it's just the staff. Okay.
Okay, so that would have been a 2-1.
And it doesn't change the outcome. According to our procedures, we simply need a majority of the quorum. We don't need a unanimous vote.
Okay.
So
All right. So
I'm
no, I
glad
guess
you're the chair pro tem, and
Bioli, weren't we holding one, I guess where my confusion was, and I apologize, is we were holding one set of minutes because we didn't, we only had one member present at the last hearing.
Right.
So do we still have, are those minutes still floating out
We
there then?
anticipate that for the next meeting,
Okay, that's where, okay,
when
gotcha.
a member list will be here who was present at that, on that meeting that we have not adopted the minutes for.
Understood. Okay, all right. Just getting all my ducks in a row. Thank you. All right, so we'll go ahead, then, item 2, we can go ahead and move. So item 3, items of interest to the public for items that are not on the agenda. So if anyone would like to speak on anything that's not on the agenda, please feel free to come up to the podium and state your business. Okay, seeing none. We'll move to communications. Andrew, do we have any communications?
There are none that are specific to tonight's agenda, but for the members' benefit, staff did provide you with a copy of the adopted resolution by council that formally adopted the changes to the development guide, chapter 13, the signage. So those are for your home references.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Okay. We will now move to the public hearing portion of the agenda and on to item 5.1, and that is for 3110 Forney Road. It's site plan review 8-03, environmental assessment -801, variance 1501, variance 1502 for the Forney Road Hotel, and this is the Forney Business Park LLC asking for a 12-month extension starting November 19th, 2017. And I'll move to Andrew now for the staff report.
Yeah, this request is being made by the Forney Business Park LLC. They submitted a timely request to extend the site plan, the 2 variance entitlements that have been granted on the site for building height and compact parking. And they did so prior to the November 19, 2017 expiration date. They are requesting this evening a 12-month extension that, if granted, would begin on that November 19th and extend for 12 months, expiring November 19th, 2018. City records indicate that the current 12-month request to extend would be the last extension allowable under City Code, which allows up to a 5-year total. That does not include any extensions that in the recent past, members may remember that City Council adopted some across-the-board extensions, automatic extensions to site plan reviews, conditional use permits, and variances. And I believe this particular project did receive one of those 2-year automatic extensions, but this would be the last one, the last in a 5-year total for the site. There are no changes being made by the applicant, and there have been no changes to the city code since the last request for an extension, which was approximately a year ago. The commission's role during an extension request for a site plan review does not involve the reconsideration of the entitlements and the previous approvals. The commission, however, must consider any changes to city code or the project, and as I mentioned, there have been no substantive changes to either of those aspects. Staff recommends the commission make the findings A through D on page 6 of staff's report and condition the project based on the 2 conditions also on page 6. The property owner's representative, Mr. Fisher, is in the audience this evening, and that concludes my staff report.
Thank you, Andrew. Any questions for staff? Would the applicant like to step forward to make any comments? You don't have to, but.
Jim Fisher here on behalf of the applicant. I'm here to answer any questions. I don't really have much to add to staff's report other than I know Mike's working hard to try to make this project pencil. It happens to be a very costly one, both with on-site and off-site improvements. But just as recently as a month or 2 ago, he's working on getting updated engineers' estimates for construction costs, and he is, diligently working on trying to make the project feasible. So,
Thank you. Any questions for?
Well, I just want to support your continuance and perseverance because it is difficult, but it's a needed item for the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I find well, I'll wait till you close the public hearing.
I was wondering if you'd taken any steps toward looking at the annexation issue, where exactly the boundaries between the city and the county are in relation to this project. Have you made any progress on that?
We did inquire with the county survey department, and our preliminary findings are that it appears to be more of a kind of a GIS, graphical issue showing the boundary in the wrong spot. The county confirmed that they have not received any taxes on any part of this parcel, and they believe all the taxes have been paid to the city. As I was kind of discussing with Andrew a little bit beforehand, is we're not, haven't finalized our findings so far, but preliminarily it appears to all be within the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any comments from the public?
So Sue Taylor, and I'm sure you're going to give them the extension, so I'm not going to go into too much, but I think my concern was, and I maybe should have done this at open forum, is this building, if you look at it from the existing grade to the highest point, is 77 feet. And I don't know if it was presented that way to this planning commission in the first place. And I'm hoping that maybe in the future, if it comes back, I think there's policies in the plans in our city plan to try not to have monolithic type structures and maybe conform more to the topography of Placerville and more of the historic element, because this is the entrance to Placerville. And I was hoping to actually catch the, I've been talking to Jim. Just in 2005, I actually did a design for this property for a person that wanted to put a commercial structure on there. So I know the difficulty of this piece of property. And sometime, to me, it was kind of amazing that someone would take it on because of the expense to develop on a site like this. I would just hope in the future maybe the Planning Commission would look at not doing structures that would cause so much massive cut and fill, especially at the entrance of our historic city of Placerville. And I think those are mostly my comments, and we'll see how he does. And I was going to offer to him maybe to come up with some concepts that maybe fit the topography just a little bit better in the future, but we'll see where it goes. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we will go ahead and close the public portion, public comment portion of this and bring it back to the commission.
Yeah, I think we've already done a lot of heavy lifting on this project, and I think, why would we not give them the extension? Because otherwise our community ends up with nothing in terms of a much needed amenity. We might squabble over the particulars of it, but we've kind of been through that already. So I'm fully supportive of giving them this extension.
Despite what Commissioner Wolf tries to represent, I'm on the same side as him with regards to this. Toad Hall immediately comes to mind in terms of approval of the circumstances are similar. Going back to some of the comments we just heard in public comment, I do recall significant discussion on this with regards to the height of the building. And I can't recall the specific details of that discussion, but there certainly is a trade-off here between an incredibly difficult site to develop, the economics that go in with developing that, what the city is requiring. There was a whole laundry list. I would encourage anyone who can offer to the applicant ways to soften or improve that are also economically viable, okay, and to strike that balance. I think the commission did look at this, and we did deliberate specifically on that when it came to us. but I'd have to go back and look specifically at that discussion. I don't recall, but it was something we took under very specific consideration. I think on balance, and it may have had to do with some of the design presentations, which we don't have in front of us today, but when it was presented, I think the way it's going to sit on the property and the view it's going to have from Highway 50, et cetera, I think is going to work. So don't hold me to that specifically, but I recall that we were satisfied at the end of the day. So I support this and would certainly support any motion that comes forward.
I find myself in a difficult situation. When I interviewed just recently for this position, I mentioned to the city council that one of my goals is to bring a new hotel or motel accommodations into the area, because this is really essential to develop this as a tourist destination. We're missing out right now by not having sufficient space available for visitors to the area. Unfortunately, giving this project an extension, I like the look of the project. I know it's going to be a very difficult site. I'm not unfamiliar with that. I haven't walked it myself, but I know that area. It is going to be very difficult to develop. And approval has been going on for, well, effectively 7 years. We're talking about a 5-year window of the approval from the city in order to complete it. But it's been going on for 7 years, and our economy recovered quite some time ago, and I think it's been possible to build on this site before now, yet nothing's been done. And while we hold this approval out, this is what I think other people refer to as the dog in the manger. We have this project, and it's approved, and it's just waiting, and it will make other project proponents come forward because they know that this one's out there and it could, soak up most of the available need, or the economy might turn. It just might not pencil out for them now, today. But then that's one more year that we're giving this project to exist and maybe get built and fulfill this need. So I'm really pulled strongly in both directions. I have said for years we need more hotel space. So here it is. But this project proponent hasn't really made any substantial effort on actually building something that can be used, that helps out our economy, helps out and helps develop this vacation destination that we want to develop. So I guess what I was looking for from the proponent is more of an assurance that they're actually in a position to move forward with building and constructing this, that they're not going to just leave us hanging for another 18 months before they break ground on something. Because I'm very frustrated. This has actually been a problem for me for years. Visitors, friends, family come to the area, and there's really no place for them to stay. If certain motels or hotels are already booked up, they're looking at Folsom or maybe Sacramento.
Well, I'd like to point out, I'm not sure I agree with the assessment that the economy has recovered to the extent that funding is freed up for quite some time. But that's a different debate, not an economist. However, there are multiple projects that we have approved: Broadway, Point View, Toad Hall, this project. There's one other one it's not coming to mind. They all have the same thing in common. The funding is incredibly difficult to obtain. I don't see how we could apply a standard differently to this project than what we just did with Toad Hall, for example. I think Ms. Savage was in the exact same position that this applicant is in. I realize it's frustrating that these projects aren't happening quicker, and there certainly is a definite need for it, but it's not, the applicant's not responsible for the need. As a matter of fact, the applicant is responding to the need. If we don't approve the project, that clearly does not advance us towards meeting the need of providing additional hotel space and creating Placerville as a destination. I think our facilitation, what we can do to help the project is to give them that 1 year, because as I read this, they're working on funding just the way Ms. Savage was. So I'm challenged by seeing how much of a difference there is, and why we would try to put a standard differently on this project, which is far more difficult. I mean, that is a difficult site to work with. In fact, if I remember, there's some strange thing with effluent, and there's some strange situation with parking, elevation or elevators or trolleys or some. I mean, it's very, very complicated. There's some elevated, so it is extremely complicated. So I'm clearly willing to give the applicant the benefit of the doubt in this particular case, because of those mitigating factors. I'm going to make the motion and move the recommendation that we grant the 1 year extension as requested by the applicant.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, it's such a conundrum, you know, when anybody who steps up and says, all right, I'm going to deal with a blank piece of paper and a blank piece of property, that is a really big challenge. And these guys have a lot of challenges on this project, and from the sewage lift station to the parking to the landscaping. So I'm not too bothered by the fact that it's taken a while to get funding for that. And then I also always come full circle to our job is to assist the city council in interpreting and enforcing the zoning ordinance, not to evaluate how good or not good these guys are. You know, we have to deal with what we're presented with here, and we've already done a lot of heavy lifting, no pun intended, on evaluating the application. So I'm happy to move this on and give them the extension.
Mr. Chair, before you call the vote, though, Commissioner Keating, I would be interested in if you have additional that you'd like to offer on that. I didn't mean to kind of close the door on your opinion. I'm interested, but it really, I'm trying to understand and reconcile, you know, where you're at with this and what we should do. I mean, what would be a better way to approach it then?
Well, you know, I appreciate the work that the Planning Commission has already done in reviewing and working with the applicant to make this as great a project as it can be. And I'm not discounting that at all, nor am I discounting how difficult this site is. I have done biological surveys in the Weber Canyon. I know that that's very difficult terrain. That's part of my trepidation, is that this is so difficult. Meanwhile, someone who may be considering coming to the city to develop an easier site that could go ahead and get their plans done, and as far as from an engineering standpoint, it's you know, a slam dunk, as opposed to this one is still going to be so difficult and so expensive. So we're giving this one, they've had 7 years to come forward and work on their engineering, and they haven't. And we need these rooms. So we get back to, you know, we're giving one applicant 7 years to develop this idea and, you know, put it on the ground. And to me, that seems unfair to a potential applicant that would come forward with something that could be designed and built in a much shorter time.
On this site?
On another site in our area. You know, as far as I don't care if it's there or on the other side of town. There are other building sites that are appropriate for some sort of hotel or motel. I'm not talking about, you know, here and then someone else come in and do a better job engineering. That's not my concern. My concern is serving our area, our whole city.
Mr. Chairman, you can stop me at any point, but I'm trying to understand this direction, though, because we have several others, number one, that we've approved, and number two, this doesn't preclude anybody else from finding a spot and building. Of
course it does.
I don't see how.
Well, from their own letter from Mr. Fisher, they talk about making the economics pencil out. That comes in. They have to assure themselves that the occupation, you know, in that building is going to justify the expense of putting it in. So they're looking at, you know, what kind of revenue they can generate. That's part of their economic study.
Okay, fair enough. So you're saying there's only so many rooms available
And I don't know what that is. I
so-
don't know, what the other, I'm not familiar with the other applicants.
The market is, I guess what you're saying, if I understand it correctly. The market pie is only so large in
That's
terms of the
right.
number of people that want to stay. On the other hand, one could argue, build it and they will come, right? More people might come here if there were more opportunities for people to stay. Some people may say, I'm not going there, there's no place for me to stay, and I have to drive home, right? So, I mean, I don't know how you argue that. I'm challenged with using that as a consideration for not granting the approval. So I'll leave it at that.
I certainly don't think it's our place to make the market decision for the applicant in terms of whether or not they believe it's in their best economic interest to move forward on this. If they're coming forward with the one-year extension, then they must believe that there's still a reason to move forward with this project. And so I want the market to be able to dictate that, that outcome. Just for the record, Andrew, so if after the 5 years, what the process just starts? I mean, they essentially start over again, correct?
Yes, correct. The entitlements that have been granted thus far, if this 12-year extension was granted, then upon that expiration date, then this would all be null and void. The property owner applicant would have to reapply.
And go through all the
Yes,
entitlements
correct.
and everything else again? Okay, that's, just wanted to put that on the record. So with that, I'm in favor of supporting this extension as well. So with that, why don't we go ahead and call a roll call vote?
Member Friend,
Aye.
Chair Pro Tem Zaragoza,
Aye.
Member Wolf,
Aye.
Member Keeney.
Aye.
I would have expected a nay, because it wouldn't have changed the outcome.
4-0.
Come with an open mind, and I expect you to do the same. And I appreciate you hearing me out.
Oh, are you in trouble?
I'll beat you down.
Well, that passes 4-0, so you have the one-year extension pending any appeals, which I don't think there will be.
Good luck to you.
Good luck. Okay. We will move on to item 6, matters from commissioners and staff, and we'll start with commissioners. Anything any commissioner would like to share?
I had a question of who might be able to cover the issue of accessory dwelling units at the city council meeting. Are you going to be able to do that, Mr. Zaragoza?
I can, yes. That would be if council has any questions of our.
Exactly, on the 10th of October, they'll be considering that. So I doubt that they will have any questions, but I just want to make sure that we would be able to provide a representative from this body.
I think we've had this discussion before, and it's always been a challenge, I think, for one representative to adequately encapsulate sometimes the full, the body's position without potentially putting their own particular spin on it. I don't know if we've had this discussion before.
We absolutely, by the way, the podium's still on. We absolutely have, and I kind of remember specifically some council members saying they did not want the commission to come and report, but don't hold me to that. But on this particular item, wasn't this pretty much, we had no choice? Wasn't this the state mandated code? So I'm kind of surprised why we would actually have to go if we really had no choice in this. Our hands were completely tied. There certainly are some other issues, and I'm thinking of the yard issue that might be one. You know,
And I agree. I think that, and that's where I actually was thinking of, having somebody attend on the yard ordinance. But you're right. That one was by state law. We were essentially mandated to adopt that position. And so it was almost perfunctory in our regard. So in that case, I won't be attending, and I think we can certainly have the discussion when it comes to the yard ordinance.
Yeah, I think the yard ordinance might be a pretty exceptional one, but I know in my different tenures as chairman, and I went a couple of times, that, in just anticipating there might be questions, but the challenge is that, you can go and represent yourself, but you cannot represent the commission. And so, and then because if there are like split, if there's situations where there's split votes, and then you go to a meeting, you can't really fairly articulate all the different sides, and that's not the place to do it anyway. So it just becomes kind of difficult. But it doesn't mean we never do it.
But the city council doesn't routinely ask that a member of the commission
No.
appear?
But I'm going to ask staff, through the chair, if I may, I'm going to request that perhaps you bring this back for discussion with Pierre and possibly the mayor to find out what the council would like for us to do, and provide some clarity and direction for us, because it can be a difficult. We certainly want to be a resource for
Exactly.
the council,
We're here
without
to
question.
support them, and if we,
Yeah.
especially on something that was unanimous, I think it's easy. There are nuances of
Yes.
opinions, but.
But I know the council, I recall specifically Councilmember Acuna, and I want to say, maybe Councilwoman Borelli, having some very strong feelings about whether or not. So I think it would probably be a good idea for all of us, veterans and not so much veterans, to have some additional direction from the council on this, how they would like it.
So
to happen.
to clarify, you're not speaking specifically on this issue, it's just a general, when items go and are recommended to that body, to the council, that's, you'd like to look at it from okay, I think I understand what. Yeah, I if I can just interplay here a little bit, I think it's really the opinion of the mayor at the time seems to dictate whether he or she wants additional information. And I believe you are correct, Member Friend, that those two members that you mentioned, I think they are rather outspoken about not wanting that type of, but I remember other members in the past where they find it useful. So maybe it's the subject matter, maybe it's their personal thoughts on the issue, but typically if you do go, it's you wait for them to ask you the questions as opposed to providing a oral report of what happened. Yeah.
And just my personal experience, I've gone a couple of times to the council to talk about an issue, but in the public comment part of it, and I always begin it with, publicly announce you're our planning commissioner, but you're only speaking for yourself when you do it, and there's never been any problem with doing it that way.
I would think on more controversial things, the council might want the planning commissioner available to just to step up and bring some calmness to something that was controversial, just to say, that this is how we voted on the accessory dwelling unit. I think, I don't know how much the public is going to speak on that, but, just to summarize what you did just now, Mr. Chairman, that our hands were kind of tied. It's a state law. We're just trying to make sure that we're in, compliance, and just say that on behalf of this body, as well as, then the city council can take it from there. But I would appreciate some clarification on what they would like on a routine basis.
Okay, routine basis, got it.
Any other comments or announcements from commissioners? Staff? Andrew?
Yeah, I've got several things here, one of which the minutes for tonight's meeting will be available tomorrow, and the packet for the 17th will also be made available to you, so I want to let you know that. Also tomorrow, we've publicly noticed for publication in the Mountain Democrat tomorrow, and today we sent out mailers regarding a negative declaration that staff has prepared, well, me, and it involves the project that some of you have inquired about because of the notice of development signs that were raised. So that document will be made available to you. However, the notice that went to it, I want to make sure you're aware that you won't hear this item until the November 7th meeting. But we strive to get the environmental documents out the same time the public has access to them, with the caveat that you're going to have a chance to make a recommendation to City Council about that particular document, as well as the nature of the request, which is a general plan amendment and zone change for 128 acres of land near Wiltsey Park. So that will be made available tomorrow as part of your information that we're providing to you. Again, I want to clarify, it is not to be heard, it's not meant to be heard on the 17th of September, but the notice is for November, so the public will have that information as well. That's for the November 7th meeting. Regarding November 7th, your regular meeting will start at 7 o'clock. And at 6 o'clock, I've been requested by Steve Ewell, the Director of Community Services, that we are going to have a joint meeting with the Parks and Rec Commission regarding the fee study that they're doing for the park development. So for the first 50 minutes to an hour, we will meet with them as a joint meeting, and then we will adjourn briefly. They will all leave the room, and at 7 o'clock, as noticed, that will go out tomorrow, as I mentioned, the public hearing item that will be heard on that date, which is, at this point, the general plan amendment zone change is the only item for that particular evening, but that could change between now and next week. The staff report for the November meetings, the joint meeting and the regular meeting, will be made available around the 24th of October, so be aware of that. We have 5 Tuesdays in this month, so yeah, bear with us on that. That's really all I have.
Could you give us an idea what the agenda is going to be for October 17?
Sure, yeah, sorry, I should have brought that up. The 17th will be the continued yards item, so the zone change. Also, and I'm going to put on the agenda, and if we do get a full house, all 5 members, we will have the elections of officers for this term. We will have the minutes from, and I can't remember the meeting date, but the meeting minutes from the minutes we have not yet adopted from, I think, early September, if I recall correctly. So that item will be made available to those people who are, will not decide to vote on it, who were here. So we'll get that out of the way. And that's really the only item the only action item is the yards.
And then are bylaws scheduled for that agenda also?
It's been my internal take is I will not bring those up unless requested by the members. If you would like us to, I mean, we do have a new member who has maybe have a chance to look at them but I know in the past you guys have kind of rolled your eyes every time I bring them forward, and so I kind of remember taking internally that I will bring them up only when requested by.
When do you need that request? When do you need that?
Well, in order to get it on and in part of the packet, we need it, 2 weeks plus days before.
So, Commissioner, are you inclined to request the bylaws come before the body on the 17th?
Have you been considering changes to
No,
the
I have
bylaws?
not personally, but
And the
you're a new
bylaws
member.
have
And,
not been formally adopted? Is
oh,
that-
no, they've been adopted.
So
I
I don't-
think periodically we torture ourselves
By,
reviewing them
By
if
reviewing
yeah.
them.
So
well, since I've just read them, I think you should too, so yes, let's torture ourselves.
I think that's a request for the bylaws to be on the agenda. Sorry, Mr.
And so
Chairman.
the,
Is that general consent by the body?
I won't oppose.
That's fine. We'll see how long the discussion goes on the front yard, but yeah, that should be
Okay.
fine.
We'll put them on there.
Yeah.
So I would move that we have the elections as the first order of business if possible. I guess we could reorder the agenda, take care of that immediately, and then have the yard discussion, and then if there's time, have the bylaws discussion.
Yeah, that would be a change in the order of business in the bylaws, but typically we schedule those at the end of the agenda because technically the new chair takes their position the following meeting, so.
We can adopt.
But yeah, you can.
I will move to suspend the bylaws for that meeting.
We'll adopt it at the meeting and just move them up. Okay, any other announcements? Yes.
I was just curious, can you give us the bird's eye view of any other development projects that are swirling about that might be coming to us in the near immediate future?
Yes, there is a reimage to the KFC at Lower Main Street that we have not deemed complete yet. So that site went through a site plan review in the 70s, got amended, if I recall, in the just before the turn of the millennia, but prior to my employment here, and other projects. Let's see, there is a couple of issues that our city initiated regarding, we really need to update our subdivision ordinance. I know Pierre is going to be bringing that forward to you probably in the winter. We also have another item involving changes to the code relative to vacation rentals that Pierre is also going to be bringing forward to you. We find that the winter might be the time to do that when development projects kind of slow down a little bit. So I don't have a date as to when that will be heard, but expect that, when it gets dark at 5 o'clock, that time of year.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes staff reports, and then we are adjourned. Thank you.